Welcome back to Ladies of Another View. I'm Beck, and we are going to be joined now with Charlie Adams. I want to introduce you. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And
Hi, Charlie.
You are an Iraq War veteran originally. Well, you're from North Dakota, right? North of Minot?
Yep, I'm from Lansford, North Dakota.
And I came across an article that you recently wrote for the Dakotan, and it is called, it's for the farmer in that column, and it's called Honor Memorial Day. And it's such a good reminder because we often think barbecues, camping, go to the lake, but it's about so much more. And for somebody who's been in Iraq and those stories that you told about some people that didn't come back, I thought I really appreciate you coming on today. So let's get started. Where and why did you serve?
Well, I grew up on the farm in Lansford, North Dakota, and I just, through growing up on the farm, learned the value of hard work. And I was kind of drawn to leadership and structure and serving my country. And so I went to West Point, applied for West Point out of high school, and went to West Point, graduated there in 2000. And then I served as an infantry officer for 5 years active duty after I graduated. And 1 year of that, I served in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom from 2003 to 2004. With an infantry unit in all over Iraq, mainly about an hour north of Baghdad.
Right. And how long were you there for?
We were there for about exactly a year. So it was early April 2003, and we got back mid-April 2004.
So Charlie, when you see the photos coming up on the screen, you can go ahead and tell us who are these people?
So these are a couple of photos actually from, time spent prior to training and prior to going to Iraq. And so that photo right there in particular is very special to me because that's my Bradley fighting vehicle crew when I was a young lieutenant in Fort Carson, Colorado. And you can see kind of the terrain downrange Fort Carson, Colorado. And that was taken on September 11th, 2001. And so we had just kind of gotten the word about what had happened in New York City to the Twin Towers, and we basically were standing by. And at that point, for young soldiers like myself and everyone in our unit, I mean, things really got real for us. I mean, kind of growing up in the 90s and 25 years plus beyond the Vietnam War, I mean, all of a sudden 9/11 really was something completely scary at the time for everybody, especially those of us in the military.
Can you tell our viewers what happened then from 2001 to you deployed in 2003? What was kind of going on with the military at that point to kind of set the stage for our viewers? Because it's been a while since that happened.
Well, absolutely. And immediately after 9/11, I mean, there was different infrastructure things throughout the United States, facilities that were kind of deemed pretty important to, just the operation of our country. And so we actually joined a National Guard unit in Pueblo, Colorado it was a munitions storage facility that the Army had at the time to basically guard it. I mean, at that point, you're on alert for any other terrorist attacks that might happen, not knowing what would happen. And, I've got friends of mine that deployed to Afghanistan pretty quickly in October of 2001, and they were with the 101st Airborne Division out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And then our unit, was alerted kind of on standby for a while, and then finally alerted early 2003, and then we deployed to Kuwait and then Iraq in April of 2003.
Wow. So while you're over there, then you're pretty much frontline fighting, correct? And so when you're stationed there, your article that you wrote, you talk about Staff Sergeant Dale Penchant. I'm not sure how to say his
Panchot. Yep.
Panchant. Can you tell us a little bit about him and what happened?
So our battalion was about 1,200 men, and we were an infantry battalion, a mechanized infantry battalion, and we'd been all over Iraq, and we kind of settled about an hour north of Iraq. And things in early April until about July of 2003 were pretty quiet because if you remember, Saddam went into hiding. We're going after Saddam and his sons, Uday and Qusay. And there was just a lot of kind of eerie silence in Iraq. Basically the standing army of Iraq had kind of thrown down their weapons and, nobody was really coming forward. And so there was pretty quiet time for us. And then in July and after, all of a sudden, there started to become more organized attacks against Americans, and people, shooting at us as we were on patrols. And so we had to really, increase our vigilance at that point, not knowing what to expect early on. And so Sergeant Panchot was on a patrol, and in the middle of the night, which had kind of been routine at the point, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, basically a very well organized attack against his patrol resulted in him dying from his injuries right there on the battlefield. And that was the first casualty that our battalion sustained, and I mean, forever ingrained in our hearts. Sergeant Panchot, November 17th, 2003.
You talked about when you were training and then all of a sudden 911 hit, and you said things got real quickly, but then they must have gotten so much more real when all of a sudden you lost a comrade. What was that like? I mean, I don't know how much you can even begin to explain, but for people who've never experienced that.
Yeah, you feel such a close camaraderie with your team, your fellow soldiers, and something that I always try to convey to people when I'm speaking to groups on Memorial Day about soldiers. We often see so many polarizing political discourse all over our country, and on the news media and on social media, and everybody's arguing about politics and world politics, and they don't like the president, all this kind of stuff. But really, what's important and what I experienced was that soldiers in battle, forward deployed, they don't care about that. They care about the soldier on their left and the soldier on their right, and making sure that everybody gets home. And they care about fighting evil and protecting their country. And it's true patriotism right on the front lines.
Isn't that the truth? True patriotism. And thank you so much for your services and your sacrifices, and for everything that you've been through and continue to educate people. We appreciate it so much.
Amen.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I always enjoy talking about my experiences, and there's many more that have served that maybe don't like talking about their experiences. So I really enjoy the opportunity.
Yeah, when I saw the article and I got a hold of you and talked to you, and you were just so willing to talk about this, I'm very appreciative, because I feel like we all need to stop and reflect, and that's what your article did. You told us about what you went through, the people that didn't come home that you knew, and it really does help us. We can't just say, oh, it's Memorial Day. It's like, no, we have to think about what is Memorial Day. And so then after you lost Dale, was there a different mood among the soldiers after that? Did that change?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of just like all of a sudden, just, hyper focus on every single soldier in the battalion, and everybody motivated to try to, make sure that this never happens again. And so, from our battalion commander on down, I mean, a very specific plan went into place as far as that particular area where that attack occurred, and just door to door trying to find information on who the attackers were. Just an increased presence in areas. I mean, at that point, people maybe have been complaining about getting tired and things like that and run down. At that point, all of that's off. I mean, it's like, we'll do whatever it takes. We got to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I bet it was very intense. I can't imagine you get much sleep in those kind of situations. That's what I always think of, like, are you kind of running on empty sometimes?
Absolutely. And I mean, soldiers in the infantry especially get a lot of training on that, sleep deprivation training. And, when you're in the middle of that training and you're like, this is kind of ridiculous. But I mean, having been there and done that, and then now we've got so many veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan that are training our younger soldiers that have those experiences and are able to, basically get that mindset in our younger soldiers as they're being trained. And that's really, really valuable.
Right.
You got to have that do what it takes attitude, right? That's a soldier's attitude.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And definitely be trained by somebody who's been there. You shared in your article about Captain Eric Palawada, or?
Yep, Captain Eric Palawada.
Okay,
yep.
Tell us about him.
So he was his company, the engineer company, was attached to us. And so while they weren't a part of our regular unit, they became attached to us while we were in combat operations. So we grew very close to them, and they did a lot of supporting operations for what we were doing. And Captain Palawada was the leader of that company, and he was a very tall person. He played basketball at West Point. He's a '98 West Point graduate. And he had a very commanding voice. And so his presence alone just commanded a lot of respect. And so we started experiencing mortar attacks late in 2003, and we trained with mortars, all throughout our time in the Army. But being on the other end of them was really one of the most horrifying things that I've ever been through. And shrapnel from a mortar round killed Captain Palawa in January 2nd of 2004.
Wow.
We'll love you forever. Yeah.
And he was engaged to be married. His fiance, you can see there on his headstone. So, very heartbreaking. And but again, like in combat, we take time to mourn, but there were some young lieutenants in that company that stepped up to take command, and they did a phenomenal job given the circumstances of not only continuing forward with the operations at hand, but also being there to keep the morale of the troops high. And just very important, very moving story.
And we hear it in movies, and I guess I've heard it from some people who have served too. The brotherhood that's formed when you're in combat like that, it's like none other. And there's a level that maybe you don't even know you have inside of you that becomes a place where you're all together there. Would that be accurate?
That's very accurate. We've all got college buddies, high school buddies, and things like that. But the brothers in arms that I served with, and we served together over there and in that unit. We still keep in touch, and as much as we can, all spread out all across the country. And another person I featured in the article was Major Darren Wright, and he wound up leaving the Army or leaving Iraq just fine, and he wound up getting promoted to full colonel. But what was unfortunate about him was in 2013, he died with a parachute malfunction in a training accident. And, he was such an inspiration to me as a young officer because he was so full of life and everyone loved him. And he was just constantly positive. And I think so much of how I approach, the business that I run today is just trying to keep people positive. And, I work in ag retail. I work with farmers, and keeping farmers positive in this spring has been something that I try to do, and something I learned from Major Wright in combat operations in 2003 and 2004.
I think it goes without saying that the whole experience, the people you met and the experience of being overseas fighting like that, changed you forever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I reference a part of the book that our battalion commander wrote, Lieutenant Colonel Nate Sassman, and the book's called Warrior King. And, he describes in that book so eloquently how, the soldiers that have been in combat, they're forever just frozen at that age. And so if you see a Vietnam veteran on the street, and these guys are pushing, they're well into their 70s, pushing 80, and you see that Vietnam, veteran cap, and you see those wrinkles and that gray beard, but through all of that is probably just a 22-year-old M60 gunner from, North Home, Minnesota, or something like that. That's what it does to you. You're forever just frozen in time for that. And so I kind of end the article saying, I'm a 26-year-old lieutenant from Lancer, North Dakota.
Right. And, and I think it is heavy stuff that we're talking about, but you also mentioned something that you have your own business now, and you're promoting things that you learned through your service, through your military service. You promote that in your community, within your own home, I'm sure. Just the things that you learned that are good things that carry you in times of trouble, in times of torment. There's things you can do, and that is a special gift you were given because of combat. Or am I off base on that?
No, absolutely. It's life lessons that you should absolutely relate to the rest of your life on how to be a better coworker, how to be a better leader in the office, how to be a better member of the community, how to be a better husband and father. There's so much that you can take away from that. And there are so many people that are struggling too with PTSD. It's still a very real thing. Veteran suicide is a very real thing. And so it's easier now more than ever with Zoom meetings and cell phones and texting to keep in touch with your veteran friends and just check in on them, make sure they're doing okay. You just never know. So just stay in touch.
Do you have several veterans around you in your area that you live now that you're able to relate with and just kind of, get together and hang out and things like that?
Yeah, there are a few. We're a very rural community, and from a North Dakota National Guardsman that is currently a teacher at Mohall Transferred Sherwood High School, to, an old guy that I see, at the bar from time to time, with his Vietnam veteran hat on. And he does a lot for the community and things as well. And so it's just a special bond.
Right.
I'm glad you brought up PTSD, because we did a program on it in the documentary, and we want to cover that topic again, because just the fact that there is healing, and that without it, so many men and women are struggling. And so is that something that you did just touch on it, but is that a message you want to get out to vets and family members, that, hey, if you're struggling, there's help, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's kind of the hardest thing. And we talk about soldiers and looking out for their, their brothers in arms, their combat veteran friends. And, so many times when you come back and it's all over, and we have a great country that's very thankful for service of their veterans, and they treat their veterans very well, especially here in our rural area. And so that's excellent. But there are so many veterans that are out there that just, they feel like they have no sense of purpose anymore, because they were on the front lines of, something tremendous. And now they don't have that, and that's a part of their past. And so it becomes difficult for people. So it's important to reach out and just check in with folks.
And what's a good way to reach out? Because, it is a sensitive subject. Like, I haven't been in war before. I haven't seen the things or lived through the things, and, or seen my friend, pass away, right? So what is a good way to start that conversation and just be there to support someone?
Well, there's local veterans groups everywhere, especially if you think of the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, BFW, AMVETS, Disabled Veterans of America. Those organizations are easy to find. That's a quick Google search. And there are all different age ranges and different veterans from different campaigns, from Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam. And the good ones are always doing something, and so there's something to get involved with all the time, and ways to reach out. Also, your local veteran service officers at the county level have training and those kind of and that kind of help as well. So that's a resource also.
We only have a minute left, but they always, I think of that saying, there's no atheist in foxholes. Is that something that faith helped you get through, or, is that something that really comes out during trying times?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was fortunate we had an excellent chaplain in the Fighting Eagle Battalion. And, he was very engaged with all the soldiers. And I think that, without that, what do you have? I mean, you have the soldiers on your left and right, but we all need that faith. And it's very important, very important.
I can't thank you enough, Captain Charlie Adams, for your service and for coming on to the show and sharing your own experiences with us.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.